Hey video creators! Time-lapse videos of wilderness scenes can add a dramatic sense of time passage and motion to your projects. In this short tutorial, I'll show you why and how to create high-quality time-lapse clips of scenery and some people shots. Combining expert content on outdoor adventures with videography tips and tutorials. Visual Adventures with Kurt Papke. Wilderness time-lapse videos pose a special challenge to videographers because they don't often have people or vehicles adding motion to a scene. On the flip side, sun or moonrise or set, cloud motion, or shadows can accentuate the passage of time. Moving in a tram or boat allows you to capture terrain flowing by. Time-lapse of cooking or gear setup can show complexity without boring the viewer. Let's take care of some of the technical details first. Apple added time-lapse capabilities to the iPhone with iOS 8 in 2014. The way it works is it starts out keeping 2 frames per second for 10 minutes, then it cuts back to 1 frame per second, and continues to cut the frame rate in half every time you accumulate 1200 frames. The result will always end up between 20 and 40 seconds, and it does a nice job of limiting how much space your video takes on your iPhone regardless of how long you let the time-lapse run. The resolution will always be 1080p. There's no settings to allow you to do 4K. In fact, there are no settings at all for time-lapse videos. The only thing you can control is exposure and focus lock, and we'll touch on those later. If you'd like more control over your time-lapse creation, I suggest you try Filmic Pro or the Moment app. Tip number 1. You must use a tripod and a sturdy phone clamp. I like this Manfrotto tripod. It's a little heavy for backpacking at 240 grams, or about 8.5 ounces, but it is stable, easy to adjust, and tilt with this little button, and can be used for handheld shooting like hyperlapses. See my video on backpacking tripods for a couple of options. Tip number 2. This one is overlooked by most of the time-lapse guides. Make sure your iPhone is level. Nothing spoils a video more than a tilted horizon. You can fix this in post, but you'll lose resolution and the edges of the clip. Learn to use the built-in iPhone level in the Measure app, but it can be hard to see the screen with the tripod on the ground, so I recommend you bring a little line level. Tip number 3. Be careful not to have too much of the ground in front of you in the frame. It can even throw off the focus of the shot if the autofocus locks onto the foreground. If necessary, use the manual focus lock. Tip number 4. Make a conscious decision whether to lock exposure. If you're doing a sunrise or sunset, you may need the auto exposure. On the other hand, if you have clouds passing over, you may need to lock exposure to prevent irritating lightening and darkening of the clip. The native camera app has no white balance lock, so if you want control over that, you'll have to use a third-party app like Filmic Pro. Tip number 5. In the Settings app, set Preserve Camera Mode. I've many times had the screen time out and the camera app reverted from video or time-lapse to photo and ended up disappointed. Tip number 6. Plug your iPhone into a charger. If the screen stays on, the power can drain faster than you realize, which could end your time-lapse earlier than you wanted. Tip number 7. Turn off the screen while filming. The first thing you want to do is open the Settings app. Then select Accessibility Settings. Under Accessibility, we're going to slide down and do Guided Access, and we're going to turn that off. Then we're going to select the Accessibility shortcut and turn VoiceOver on. Okay, let's go ahead and try it out. Let's bring up our time lapse. We're not actually going to start it. Click the right button 3 times very quickly. That brings up the voiceover mode. And now we click the screen 3 times quickly with 3 fingers. Tip number 8. Set your iPhone to do not disturb while filming, or even create a special focus. You probably already have your phone in airplane mode because of no signal in the backcountry, but double check that it's off. Tip number 9. If you want to do a speed ramp, don't record in time-lapse mode. Use regular video. The normal speed sections will look much better. Tip number 10. You'll need to consciously seek out time-lapse opportunities. Great lighting, shadows, mist, and snow, just for examples. You can't just set up your camera and record. You have to seek out those special places and moments. Happy time-lapsing! I hope this video will help you take better footage, and if you learned something, please click like or subscribe down below. Happy trails!